Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside recruiting analyst Joseph Hastings right there. And down there in the center square today, we have Andrew Bone, our senior recruiting editor for BamaOnLine.com. We intended to have Tim Watts, our site publisher, with us. Tim, it appears, is on maybe like the 2-day DL. He'll be back in no time. But we'll miss him today. We'll still soldier on. We have a capable dynamic duo here of Hastings and Bone. I don't know, that could be a law firm. Kind of sounds like two guys if we put you guys together. But hey, guys, we're going to talk some transfer portal, obviously, not just with Alabama football. We'll get into some Alabama men's hoops a little bit later as it relates to Nate Oates' team. But let's start with football. Let's start with the portal. Obviously, there's been some movement both ways this week. A lot of that focusing, Andrew, on the defensive secondary. So let's get the latest as it sits here about mid-morning on Friday. Who's expected in Tuscaloosa from the transfer portal, as we know right now?
I know everybody's excited about having some defensive backs on campus this weekend, and yeah, they were originally supposed to have 3 DBs in town, but now they will have 2, and I think that's okay. Deshaun Jones out of Wake Forest, who's be a redshirt junior this upcoming season, started last year for the Demon Deacons, had 3 interceptions. Now he's going to be in Tuscaloosa on Saturday and Sunday with both of his parents. This is going to be his first trip to Alabama. I spoke to him briefly the other day. Thursday, and he was really excited. So he's really looking forward to getting down there, getting a chance to meet with the coaching staff, and then go from there. As of right now, it looks like he is going to take a visit to LSU on early next week, but we'll see if something changes. And then you also have King Mack, safety out of Penn State, entered the transfer. These are guys that entered the transfer portal over the last few days. Not like they entered the portal in the last couple of weeks. These are just
at the buzzer.
At the buzzer. So you're going to get these guys on campus. King Mack, who was a freshman this past season at Penn State, he's going to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend for an official visit. And those are 2 guys that we're focused on right now. Isaiah Hamilton, who entered the portal on late Tuesday night from Houston, was originally set to visit Alabama this weekend. That visit has now been canceled. Is pretty much heavily leaning towards Ole Miss all of a sudden. We know Ole Miss was in contention before he canceled the Alabama visit, but it seems like they have really pulled ahead in that recruitment, and looks like he is pretty close to making a decision. So we'll see what happens there. But getting 2 defensive backs on campus this weekend, 1 safety, 1 a corner, 2 areas where they really need help, especially at safety, especially at corner, because you go and you look at the roster tracker at BamaOnLine.com, you see there's only 5 scholarship cornerbacks on your roster as of right now. They would certainly appreciate another addition or 2 in that regard. So we'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, Joseph, you think about this too in relation to Cameron Howard from Charlotte already being committed via the transfer portal there at a safety position. And I look at King Mack. I always like to look at football DNA, right, with these guys. Where do they come from? And with King Mack, you're talking about, as Andrew knows very well, St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the premier high school football programs. You know this too, Joseph, with your background. You're not going to find a better preparation sort of place than St. Thomas Aquinas. We can go through the list of former Alabama players that have gone on to great things here just recently, as a matter of fact. But he is a guy that could check a couple different boxes. I think, as Andrew noted, he is a safety, but maybe he factors in there at the Husky position, seems to have some of those qualities that you like at that spot. So when you start connecting these guys, it makes a lot of sense, right?
It absolutely does. He comes from St. Thomas Aquinas, a school that Alabama is familiar with recruiting at least the previous staff. And, he's somebody that could fill that need there in the secondary. Talk about the lack of depth at the cornerback position. You had a couple departures at safety. The addition of Cameron Howard to via the transfer portal. But, he's interesting because, he signed to, a well-known Division I program, Penn State, highly recruited guy, four-star prospect. Didn't see the field too much in his freshman campaign. But there's potential there, and that's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody that you could, ideally it would have been, earlier on, a few months ago before the spring, before spring practice began, to get that development process started, but at least get into the program, hopefully to make an impact. If not this season, next season and beyond. But yeah, Alabama's doing their due diligence. I know a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen there in the secondary. Alabama has done an exceptional job of bringing in those transfers on the offensive side of the ball, especially early on after after Kalen DeBoer and company were hired. But got to get some reassurance on that back end. But they're bringing in a couple of guys. We'll see how things play out there in terms of interest with them and if other visits are taken. But yeah, King Mack is definitely an interesting one, just because signed with a big time program. 4 years left of eligibility, so he'll be one to watch.
Yeah, he's kind of the best of both worlds. He has played some football at the Power 5 level, not a ton,
Yeah.
but did see the field for a program like Penn State a year ago as a true freshman. I believe, Andrew, he was one of Penn State's highest rated recruits for the 2023 cycle. So this was a coveted guy just a couple of years ago. You could also project him maybe to being a special teams guy early on, and then continuing to add depth too, both at safety, because Keon Sabb and Malachi, you feel good about those two guys right now, but you bring in a Cameron Howard, that helps you a little bit there, because you've had Peyton Woodyard hit the portal. Tony Mitchell has hit the portal. So it's a little bit of give and take, but you're getting older, I would say, in some of these areas, and you're adding some actual game experience. And then corner two, when you think about the situation that Alabama is trying to address maybe as early as this weekend, it's no knock against Zabian Brown or Jalen Mbakwe or Zay Mincy or any of these tremendously talented young early enrollees that Alabama welcomed in December and into the spring semester. But it's also Alabama in terms of the standard is compete for national championships. So whereas you totally expect, Andrew, these young guys to be really, really good and perhaps not too far down the road, you're still trying to win. You're trying to win at the highest level, and you got to do what you got to do at some spots.
The transfer portal is tricky because you're trying to recruit players from it, whether it's to become a starter in your secondary or you need depth. Some positions you're looking at it as they have two starters. I want to go somewhere that there is an opportunity for me to start right away. But there's also kids out there like a King Mack who saw a lot of playing time last season, not as far as safety, but he started on special teams. I mean, he was one of the guys who was out there pretty much all season long on special teams. And what I always like to do is I like to go on social media. I like to go to team websites to kind of see what their reaction is when a player enters the portal. And it was all the Penn State fans were upset. They felt like this was a big loss for them. They did not think he was going to be a starter this season. They got two returning starters at Penn State for this upcoming fall. And I think that's probably a reason why he decided to enter the transfer portal. But everybody, from the reporters, from the fans, seemed like he was going to be kind of that number two guy, that next guy that was going to go in and make a big contribution. They were really excited about his future, felt like he was going to be a great player. He's 5'10", about 190 pounds, has great speed. And like, you guys were talking about, he comes from one of the best high school football programs in the country. And, he was a top 100 recruit. So this is a kid that I think Alabama is excited about, not only because he can potentially add depth, but he's a talented kid and could see the field, very early for Alabama. Whether that's a backup role, they like to rotate defensive backs in there. So, we could see him playing a lot this season if he decided to go to Alabama. Now, one thing we don't know is other schools that are involved. And we kind of saw that with Isaiah Hamilton this week, saw that with Edward Woods. Edward Woods was a cornerback that entered the transfer portal last week. All signs were pointing to Alabama. He's had a visit scheduled to Tuscaloosa Told me on Sunday that he didn't know if he was even going to make the Michigan State trip. Ended up going to Michigan State for the visit and committed, on Monday. And then Isaiah Hamilton, he talked to a couple reporters on Thursday, was dead set on going to Alabama, a 3-day trip. I mean, he was going to be in Tuscaloosa Friday through Sunday, and all of a sudden, Ole Miss jumps in and decides to go ahead and shut down his recruitment. And I think a lot of these kids, not saying they're promised playing time, but I think a lot of them see that there might be a better opportunity to start right away at certain programs, whereas Alabama, at some positions, like we said, they're not guaranteeing starting playing time. And you got to get kids on campus, sit down with them, try to recruit them, try to show them exactly what the depth chart looks like, show them how they fit in with the defense, and then they got to make a decision. But you got to get kids on campus first. And some of these kids that Alabama has communicated with in the secondary over the course of the last couple of weeks just didn't end up visiting. And I don't know if that's necessarily from Alabama's perspective. They didn't push hard enough to get these guys on campus, or these kids just decided that, they had a better opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, and if you're Isaiah Hamilton, you may realize that another corner's coming in this weekend too, in Deshaun Jones. So it's not just in terms of the competition that you'll walk into potentially. Of course, there's NIL that's probably taken into account in all this too. I would, if I was one of these guys, you daggum right, that would be taken into account. But at corner, Damani Jackson is already there. He was brought in to be a plug and play guy at one corner. We may see one of these early enrollees continue to develop at a rate that makes it extremely difficult to keep him off the field. So there is competition at the spot. There's just not experienced guys that you're going into the season with. And again, kudos to Kalen DeBoer and this staff, because you can't hope at Alabama. You have to be as sure as you can possibly be at every spot on the football field to achieve to the standard that's been set with a program like the Crimson Tide. So when we think about the back end and we think about the transfer portal in general, Joseph, boy, you can't say the staff and the support staff and all the people involved at Alabama don't turn over every rock, because you look at like Deshaun Jones and you look at King Mack and you think, yeah, Power 5 guys, sensible options, from the transfer portal. But then there is a guy like Cameron Howard, that comes from Charlotte. So it's not just limited to a certain level or a certain conference or two that this staff is looking for.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, they're doing their due diligence. They're seeing their options. You gotta fill those spots in the secondary, like we talked about. But Alabama has done a good job, via the portal. I know there's a lot of portal freak out right now, especially with it being the spring portal window coming to the end here, and a couple of departures. One of them being a recent signee, and then Tony Mitchell as well. So, there's always a little bit of a freak out phase there, but then just see how everything finishes out in terms of these visits and who ultimately ends up transferring to Alabama. But, look at the guys that they bought in, with when Coach Saban was there, it was Damani Jackson, LT Overton, Naquil Bertrand, offensive lineman.
Jeremy Bernard, Parker Brailsford.
Austin Mack, Parker Brailsford. Caden Proctor too, bring him back into the fold. Graham Nicholson, who won the Lou Groza Award. I mean, the staff has done an exceptional job recruiting in the transfer portal. Bringing in these guys. Getting them to. I know people thought it was like an automatic that the Washington guys would come over to Alabama, the ones that they were pursuing, but to make that cross country move to Alabama, that just goes to show the level of trust. Faith that those players have in Kalen DeBoer and his staff. So I thought that was a very encouraging sign from the very beginning. And you get a guy like Keon Sabb too in the fold. So, I think they've done an A job, recruiting in the transfer portal. Obviously, you want to fill those spots there in the secondary, specifically at the corner position. But, I thought they've done a very good job so far and have assembled a really good roster. Look, at this point, based on the outlook, how things kind of look right now, there is going to be a reliance on the offense, to carry their weight and, put up points, especially with maybe, you know, a little bit of an adjustment phase there going on defense, specifically in the back end. But no, I think they've done a great job so far.
And you still got Ryan Williams and a
Yeah,
couple
you got
other
that guy
receivers
Ryan Williams. Yeah,
about to
no
hit campus coming up in about 4 weeks or so. And Andrew, speaking of Mobile, we heard from Kalen DeBoer last night at a charity event down in that area, and he felt very comfortable with the work that's been done from a roster perspective, and kind of going back to what Joseph talked about in the various areas of this football team. I agree. I think they've given as good as they've gotten when it comes to the portal and sort of rolling with those punches, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, Joseph kind of went through the whole list there, but I do think that they have done, a really good job filling needs, hitting, guys that, can come in and make a big contribution to your team this upcoming season. You also, have somebody like Austin Mack who, is coming in, learn behind, the quarterbacks who are there, and a guy that's very familiar with the system and can also help the guys who are already there, despite potentially not starting this upcoming season. So I do think that they've certainly done well there. Obviously, you get through spring practice, you figure out what exactly you still need and what holes you need to fill. And I know everybody was kind of freaking out and upset. Tony Mitchell and Peyton Woodyard entered the transfer portal this week, but it's not like this wasn't something new. This was something that Alabama had a feeling was going to happen. I think when Coach DeBoer is out there a couple of weeks ago talking about, hey, we need help in the secondary, we're going to have to go fill some needs. I think they probably already had an idea that these were some of the guys that were going to enter the transfer portal and what their numbers were going to be like at each position. So it's not like Tuesday happened or Monday happened, these guys enter the portal and they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe they've entered the portal. We got to go find somebody else. They've known this. They've been evaluating guys. They've had guys on their list that they wanted to go after. I don't think it was just something that happened this week. Cam Howard out of Charlotte, everybody was kind of wondering, how did this guy even, pop up on the radar? But there were so many safeties that entered the transfer portal over the course of the last couple of weeks that I feel like every fan on our site said Alabama's got to go after that guy. He's a top guy in the Pac-12. He's the top guy in the Big Ten. He's the top guy in the ACC. Let's go get him. And Alabama evaluated. They passed. They went after Cam Howard. So you got to trust their evaluation a little bit more and just kind of wait and see how it goes once these kids get there. Obviously, cornerback position a little bit different because there have been some misses there. And we always say, if a kid never stepped on campus, it's not necessarily a miss because you didn't get a chance to really recruit him and sit down with him. Coach DeBoer didn't get a chance to meet with some of these guys. So some of them didn't visit campus, and everybody's kind of freaking out that, oh my gosh, we missed on this kid, we missed on that kid. But the transfer portal is a little bit different because you do recruit them. It is a position of need, and you want to get them on campus. You want to decide, hey, is this somebody that can help our team? And you know what? Most of the time in the transfer portal, when these kids come on campus, they don't have offers before they get to campus. You want to get them on campus. You want to sit down with them. You want to evaluate them from a mental standpoint. You want your players to be around these guys. Hey, does this guy have what it takes to play here? It's not just based on film, how they're ranked, what Pro Football Focus grades they have, how many interceptions or tackles they had last season. You got to have it mentally. You got to be able to play here. And, that's kind of what Alabama does as far as bringing these kids in for visits. They want to sit down with them, get to know them, and decide, is this somebody that we're going to really go after, that we're going to make an offer to, and we're going to fully commit to. And, I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because everybody just kind of looks at, oh man, that kid's in the portal. We got to go after him right away. And, when it doesn't happen, people get upset, but that's, pretty much the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, I think for Alabama too, Joseph, this is a bridge year at some positions too.
Yeah.
Like the secondary, where you have quality guys in the pipeline, but as I talked about earlier, to maintain the standard of competitiveness and championship viability, Now, you got to bridge some things. Now, some of these guys, like a King Mack, as we talked about, he's got 3 years left of eligibility. So it's not just a plug and play or a rental, I guess you could say, in all instances. But, there are some, believe it or not, high school guys of interest too, right, fellas, that are going to be on campus this weekend. 3 in particular that I know you guys are excited about: Joseph, and Edge and Damian Shanklin from the Indianapolis area. You got the linebacker, who our guy Tim Watts absolutely loves, Ty Jackson. And then the in-state offensive lineman, Micah DeBose. So let's not forget about the high school guys too, JoJo.
Yeah, I'm going to get to them real quickly. I did want to bring up that point that you mentioned about it being kind of a bridge year. It's important in those type of years to have some experience at those key positions. And you have a Keon Sabb who has championship game experience. You have Damani Jackson, a couple of years of experience. So, it's not going to be, all green, so to speak, just in terms of that level of experience. Those guys will be able to help the younger guys with that transition process and help show them the ropes. You got guys like Maurice Linguist coaching, coach for the Dallas Cowboys, head coach of Buffalo, and Colin Hitchler as well, who's been coaching for over a decade. So, it's good in those bridge years to have the experience coaching wise and also with some of the players on the roster. And you look at the upcoming guys coming up on campus, over the spring, during the scrimmages, during A-Day game, we got very excited for those big visitor days and big visitor weekends when a bunch of guys would come in, top prospects would come in, get to interact with the coaching staff, spend a few days on campus. I think these visits are pretty interesting too. The ones that are sandwiched in between those spring practice ones and the summer official visits. It could kind of serve as a little bit of an official, like a semi-official, just because they get a lot more time with the coaching staff than they previously got. The Bows visited earlier this spring, so did Jackson as well. Shanklin's taking his first visit, recently received an offer from Alabama. So I think these type of visits are are really interesting in terms of setting the table for the official visits, potential official visits coming up in the summer for these guys. The Bows has one set up for June 21st to the 23rd. Waiting to see if Jackson gets one scheduled. Same thing with Shanklin. He's got his 4 weekends in June booked. We'll see if Alabama could potentially get a midweek visit or sometime thereafter. But yeah, no, this is a very interesting weekend just in terms of getting these guys on campus. Trio of 2025 guys that Alabama's pursuing. And especially with a guy like DeBose returning twice in the spring, in state, somebody that Alabama has picked up some momentum for. I think it's going to be a pretty good weekend to follow.
A couple of things in play, Andrew, with these guys that stand out. DeBose, we've been kind of waiting on some OLs, right? And he's an in-state guy. And then when you mention Ty Jackson, you might get a little bit of that another linebacker refrain, but this isn't just any linebacker. Just Tim Watts will tell you more on that for sure. And then Shanklin, at a position of value, edge, and a guy who looks like he has tremendous upside.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'll talk about Shanklin first. And this kid out of Indianapolis, number 1 recruit in the state of Indiana. He actually was just offered a week ago. He was offered last Friday and quickly set up an unofficial visit to Alabama, and has already said that he's going to come back for an official visit. Now, I've seen, based on some reports, Tennessee and Texas are very high on his list. He also really likes Ohio State. So he's going to take official visits this summer before making a decision. I think that as of right now, he's got a decision date in September. I believe that's September the 21st, if I'm not mistaken. But so he got a little bit of time to recruit him, get him on campus. Obviously, Alabama's going to have to play a little bit of a catch up there. And like we said earlier, they're going to have to decide if they're going to really push for him. If they're going to push for an official visit, if they're going to push for him to be in this class. So this is a guy that they're going to have an opportunity to sit down with this weekend and make that decision, because there are some other Wolf candidates that are out there that they've been heavily pursuing for a while, including Dawson Merritt, who could be getting pretty close to making a decision. And Caleb Falk is an Auburn commitment. And then, you also have a guy like Justin Hill, who is out of Cincinnati, out of Winton Woods High School. So those are some of the top Wolf guys. So getting another potential target at that position is good, because you don't have any commitments yet at that position, and you're still kind of waiting to see who's going to be able to jump on board first. Most of the guys you're recruiting are out of state except for Falk. So we'll see what happens there. And then, getting Micah Dubose on campus again, very positive because he did visit earlier this spring. And I wrote about this morning in our feature on the visitor story. There's a kid that has had a kind of a roller coaster recruitment over the course of the last year. I mean, he committed to Georgia back in January of 2023, was pretty firm with his commitment for a while. Then Alabama really started to make a strong move with him. And then in the fall, it was all Auburn. And then kind of in the winter months, it was all LSU. And now it's kind of a wide open race until the finish line. We think he's going to make a decision probably in maybe in July, August before his senior season. Now, he hasn't actually set up a decision date yet, but that's something that we're kind of watching pretty closely to see when he does make that decision. But Alabama is going to get the last official visit on June the 21st. So getting him on campus before the summer official visits start, I think is very positive for Alabama. And then, the last guy you mentioned, Ty Jackson, one of the very best high school football recruits in the country. And Alabama's got an outstanding linebacker class. I mean, it is a stacked class. I think they're really excited about it. I think, if signing day were today, all these guys signed, they didn't add anybody else at the inside linebacker position, I think Alabama would be really excited about the group they have coming in. But they're not closing the door on Ty Jackson. This is the number one linebacker in the country out of Florida, Florida State, Miami, Florida. Those are all been schools that are high on his list. Now he's got officials set for Georgia and Tennessee, and those are also schools that he really likes a lot. But getting him back on campus after an early spring visit, very positive for Alabama there. Now they got to set up an official. He has not set up an official yet to Alabama, so if they can get him locked in for an official, they're going to have a realistic chance. I mean, this is a kid that's all over the field. He's recruited as an inside linebacker. Had 135 tackles as a junior. So this is a guy that you don't pass on. We always talk about, all right, can you hit your needs at each position? And then once you hit those needs, who are guys that you would take no matter what? This is one of those guys.
Best player available. It still resonates. Hey, Joseph, we talked about the high school guys. We talked about portal targets. But I know you were able to catch up with a junior college target. Man, it just seems like with the transfer portal now, we don't hear as much about the JUCO guys these days. But Xavier Hardy, 6'5", 260 from East Mississippi Community College, not too far away from Tuscaloosa. And you had a great update on Hardy, who looks like he's already got some officials set with his home state, Georgia, Arkansas, Mississippi State, South Carolina, who he believe committed to out of high school. Where's Alabama in that mix right now?
Yeah, East Mississippi Community College, everyone knows that from Last Chance University. They have a great developmental program as well, being able to get guys in and produce them to those Power 5 programs that they were previously being recruited for. And you look at somebody like Xavier Hardy, a four-star recruit coming out of high school, committed to South Carolina. It was a last-second decision with making that signing with East Mississippi Community College, but he had a productive year last year, 3.5 sacks and 13 solo tackles, over 20 total tackles there with the Lions in 12 games played. So Alabama visited him on Wednesday. Freddie Roach was there, had a good conversation with him. That was actually his first time talking with the staff, whether it was during his junior college recruitment or his high school recruitment. So just establishing the relationship right now, Alabama getting into the mix with schools like, Auburn involved, Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi State, as you mentioned, Arkansas, trying to get into the mix of those programs and trying to secure a visit. He doesn't have anything lined up right now, but is working with Coach Roach to get that set up. But, he likes Alabama, likes the history of their defense, what they've been able to do on that side of the ball. Thinks the program is still going in the right direction under Kalen DeBoer. And, will be somebody to watch. Obviously, Alabama's got some top targets along the defensive line. One of them that we've really talked about is Josiah Sharma out of California. Bama visited him earlier this week, sent a trio of coaches to go see him. So he's a priority target, got on campus a trio of times this year. But, it's interesting going to the JUCO ranks because you got somebody with who will have a couple of years of experience in college before he steps foot on Alabama's campus or wherever he decides to go to. So definitely somebody to watch. Alabama's now in the mix for. He's got interest in, and it's going to be interesting to see how things play out with D-line recruiting, as it always is. Bone and I always talk about this just in terms of the D-line recruiting efforts, and how it's sometimes a little bit of a back and forth. You see a lot of parity at that position group in particular, especially with the prevalence of NIL. But Hardy's definitely a name to know now.
Yeah, NIL, when it comes to the big guys on the defensive side, it's nuts. That's all I'll say about that. And it's not really related to any of these guys we're talking about, but just hearing some of from the tales from the transfer portal trail right now for some of the DL that are out there. Yeah, you better have a big check ready to go for some of those guys. Hey, we want to remind you too, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel right here for BamaOnLine.com, we would certainly love for you to do that. Appreciate it a great deal. Hit a like button for us too if you're enjoying the show, and turn on those notifications. Hit the notification bell. You get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here on the YouTube home for BOL. And of course, you want to be with these guys and myself, Tim Watts, the rest of the BOL staff, and all those Bama fans at the Roundtable, our premium message board right there at BamaOnline.com. So, Andrew, JoJo kind of hit on it. It seems like the approach recruiting wise on the road here of late has been C to signing C, because between your reporting, Joseph's reporting, Tim, the staff has been hitting the spots here of late.
No doubt. I mean, they've been on the road for the last 2 weeks, hitting. Hadn't seen everybody just because you're kind of waiting to see, for players to start their spring practice. So a lot of kids had not started spring practice up until this week, and some don't even start until next week. So coaches want to get out. People keep asking us, why haven't they seen this guy or that guy? Well, because his spring practice hadn't started yet. Be patient. They'll be out there on the road next week, and they'll be seeing a lot of these, top end guys. But they have been everywhere. I mean, as Joe mentioned, they were out in California. They were in Northern California. They were in Southern California. They were in Florida, Texas, Northeast. I mean, they have been pretty much blanketing the country throughout the last 2 weeks. And, we've got a great coaches thread, spring visits on the BOL roundtable that we're keeping updated every single day as far as coaching stops. We've seen a lot of new offers that have gotten extended over the course of the last couple of weeks in the 2025 class, 26, and we've seen some 2027s. Now, the majority of those offers still kind of contingent on, hey, you need to come to campus, meet with Coach DeBoer, maybe work out in camp, see how you perform. But there have been a couple of those offers that we've seen that have become committable, including Keelan Russell, the quarterback out of Duncanville High School in Texas, who was offered last Wednesday. So, there's going to be a few of those guys that earn committable offers this spring. We're going to see some guys that were high on the recruiting board maybe a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that coaches go out there, they see them, they're going to move down the recruiting board because they finally see them in pads, they see them work out, and they're like, this isn't a guy for us. But they're also going to go out there, they're going to see a lot of kids that may not have as much attention, or they might be a 3-star, and they like them a lot more than they like the top 100 kid or the 5-star kid. And, they really start pushing for them a little bit more. We saw, we kind of saw that with Latzir Brooks earlier this year. Nobody knew about him. Didn't have really any offers except for Alabama from last summer. We didn't really even know about him, but came to campus. They loved him, met with him, sat down with him, evaluated his film, and they didn't even need to see him in spring practice or summer camp. They were ready to take his commitment right away. So there's going to be a lot of kids like that, but this is a great period where you can go out, you can evaluate, you can determine, do we need to see those guys a little bit more in summer camp? Do we need to not waste our time? Are we going to bring these kids in for official visits? Are we going to make them a committable offer? There's a lot that kind of goes on to this spring evaluation period. And it's not just out there evaluating kids as far as their football skills. You're sitting down with their academic counselors at their school. You're talking to teachers. You're talking to principals. You're trying to figure out as much information as you can about all of these kids before you really invest. Because as we know now, these are a lot bigger investments than they were 4 or 5 years ago. You are making a full commitment. Unfortunately, these commitments are basically a 1-year commitment now with the transfer portal and NIL. But I mean, it's a big opportunity for these coaches to go out and evaluate, establish some relationships, and continue to build and make some tough decisions.
Hey, JoJo, let's talk some hoops with you. The portal, it stays hot for Nate Oates, as we know. And right now, it talked about this with Tim yesterday, but the focus on the bigs, primarily Clifford Amore, and also Ugo Ongenso. I'll get it right here in just a little bit. Both 6'11 types, both originally from Nigeria. We know Amore was in Tuscaloosa for a brief visit earlier in the week. What do we know about that situation right now as Nate continues? The vibes have been largely positive through all this, even with Rylan Griffin moving on and some of the attrition that they have sustained. But with the potential for Sears to come back and with Nelson already announcing that he's coming back, it just seems like there's just one or two more pieces to solidify what this team can be for next season.
Yeah, you want that rim protecting big. For reference, Cliff averaged 2.9 blocks per game last season. Alabama as a team averaged 4.3 blocks per game last season. So he would bring a much needed presence there as a rim protector, especially as we saw when Alabama went up against the likes of Purdue, UConn, trying to guard Donovan and Edey down there in the post. It was a little bit of a struggle. Those guys would bring help. You mentioned Hugo as well, who is in the NBA draft. He was an early entrant. Initially wasn't a part of that initial release put out by the NBA, but was later added. One of 6 guys later added. So he'll be one to watch just in terms of how things will play out with Cliff initially. But Cliff's an interesting recruitment in that he entered the transfer portal on March 20th. He's taken visits to Kansas State and Georgetown before he went to Alabama, and then is also visiting North Carolina this week. Took his visit on Thursday. So that's a little bit different than how things have played out before, because if you recall, Houston Mallett out of Pepperdine, one and only visit, Alabama commitment, boom. Chris Youngblood, Alabama got in touch with. He rescheduled he canceled his Louisville official visit, took one to Alabama, boom, commitment on the visit. Aiden Holloway, one and only visit, boom, committed. So it's different. Things have played out a little bit different with this recruitment. I think that's why Alabama fans were a little bit anxious because of how that recipe has played out before, where you get someone on campus and then they commit. But Cliff is taking his time. There's some factors at play here with his recruiting process, but things went very well from what we were told. If you follow Preston Murphy on Twitter, it's and have his notifications on, you'll see all the daily, Clifford hints that are in his graphics and pictures that he posts, which is always fun to see. But he would be a big addition, literally and figuratively, for Alabama's roster next season. Which Tim talked about it before. I'm going to steal what he said. It'll be a top 5 roster, if not already. And adding Cliff could put it to that top 3, if not best roster in the country. When you combine that experience that they're bringing in via the transfer portal, the guys like Chris Youngblood, who has 4 years of experience, Cliff, who has 4 years of experience, Houston Mallett as well, and then also some of those younger guys with potential. Darion Reed, Aiden Sherrill, LeBaron Phelan, who they recently added, after he decommitted from Kansas. Aiden Holloway, who only spent a year in college, so he's got, he's got some development to go through. And then the possibility of Mark Sears returning and Grant Nelson already returning. It's a lot, for a team here and a program that has really made a lot of strides under Nate Oates. This could be a very exciting season. I'm excited to see how things play out. And, obviously Cliff is the last big domino to fall there.
Yeah, great guards are essential to championship teams. There's no doubt about it. But I think you're also seeing, if you're a quality big, it's kind of like the defensive lineman we talked about in football a little bit earlier. If you're a legit high-level big at this point in the transfer portal, the demand's going to work out probably pretty nicely for you there as well. Hey, guys, we got some comments here in the chat that I wanted to get to. TechTix22 asks, how much eligibility do Bone and JoJo have left? I'll take them in the secondary with all this premium coverage they're giving us. I see what you did there, Tactics, with coverage
That's
in these
not
two
bad.
guys. No doubt about that. I like that.
That was good.
But for the real secondary, you don't want that.
I've seen both these guys. I mean, nice guys, great at what they do. Me as well. You know, we're not going to win any
My
probably 40-yard
athleticism
dashes.
I think my
Yeah.
athleticism remained in high school.
Yeah. Caleb
I may have
Skelton.
1 year left. I'm
Caleb Skelton here in the chat. With our front seven, corners will look even better. I don't know if they could make Joseph and Andrew look better, the Alabama front seven, but it's a good point. I mean,
Yep.
if this Alabama front seven is what we think it can be, it's going to go a long way in helping you transition at some important spots on the back end in a new system.
No doubt. I mean, you have a great defensive front. You've got some great pass rushers. You can get to the quarterback, affect him. It's certainly going to help these guys, especially if, Alabama's going to get some help in the transfer portal. I don't doubt that at all. Where it's going to come from, we're still kind of waiting to see. They're not going to have 5 scholarship cornerbacks on the roster when we enter the fall. I hope not. I mean, I don't think Alabama hopes that as well. I certainly expect them to get a corner, but we saw these freshmen make a lot of headlines throughout the course of the last few months, whether that was at the All-American games, once they stepped on campus, especially a guy like Red Morgan, who created a lot of buzz, during spring practice. Really looking forward to kind of seeing what these guys are able to do. And people keep saying, "Oh, well, they're freshmen; they're going to have some lumps. It's tough to start as freshmen in the SEC." But hey, you know what? At least they're really talented freshmen. It's not like they're guys that have to wait around and they need to be developed and they're not ready to play. Not saying they're not ready to play, but they're probably a little bit more ready to play than most freshmen throughout the entire country. So if you can get some talent in there as far as some depth and some experience, that's going to go a long way with helping those guys develop and mature. And hopefully you don't see any significant injuries or anything like that. But I do expect, like I said, I do expect Alabama to add somebody from the transfer portal at the cornerback position, and they might even add 2. So just kind of wait and see what happens over the course of the next.
Bonus corner from Andrew Bone. We
Maybe.
like that.
I'm not saying
On record, I got it right there. 42-10 on the
yeah.
show.
Let's put
I'm gonna
that.
clip that.
That's not a prediction, but I don't think they're going to close the door yet. I mean, they're looking, and obviously the transfer portal window closed. That doesn't mean people aren't in the transfer portal.
Right.
There's a lot of guys that are in the transfer.
Just look at this weekend.
Yeah, that you're evaluating, that you're trying to go after, and
JT83 here in the chat. What grade would you give Yay Alabama as an organization as of now? For me, it's to be determined because it's still in the forming stages, and you're transitioning from a situation with Nick Saban where it wasn't as important to now you're in the big pond with all the other big fish, and it is going to be important for Alabama moving forward. So, we'll see. I think
people don't understand or realize what money is in there. Everybody's like, are we not raising enough money? I think they got money. They're just not, making a certain player, significantly higher paid than the next guy on their roster. I mean, that's just not what Alabama's done. With Nick Saban, we're not hearing that with Caleb DeBoer. Now, Yay Alabama probably has a lot more money than they did.
Put it this way. You weren't going to probably get Nick to the mullet toss in Orange Beach last weekend, but Kalen, you can get to the mullet toss. So I do think with Kalen, there will be more opportunities with the head football coach because Nick didn't like it. I mean, he didn't mind. He doesn't mind players being compensated, but what we have right now, Nick was pretty vocal about that, and understandably so. It is a mess largely, but it's just going to be. It's just different in a lot of different ways. I'd say with the sort of direction of the football program, I think it's positive, and it's whether you like it or not, it's pretty much where we're headed. But
they need to get some. They need to get some of these former players from the NFL to start contributing. And I think we've seen that's what Ohio State's been doing with their
that's
foundation.
true.
So, yeah, I think there's plenty of. And I'm not saying they've got to do it. They've got to jump back in and take care of their program. But you see other schools doing it. You see other former players jumping in saying, "Hey, I'm going to donate this amount. I'm going to donate that amount." You get some of these former Alabama players who are making $100+ million over their career in the NFL to jump on board. You quickly have a lot more fuel in the fire that you can use.
Tara here in the chat, Andrew, says she's looking forward, and Joseph, she's looking forward to hitting the New Jersey Turnpike to see Latsier Brooks this fall. She's going to give us a scouting report, JoJo. We'll look forward to that, right?
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, Latsier Brooks is one of the more exciting prospects in the 2025 cycle, regardless of position. I would love to see him in person, hoping we can get that set up. But Tara, we're going to be running a bunch of Friday Night Lights threads where, I'll be at games and, we'll be following, social media for what some of Alabama's commits and targets do. Be sure to drop your scouting report on Brooks. We'd greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, we're only like a little more than 100 days away from high school football cranking up. Think about that, guys.
How is that possible?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Lance Hunter here in the comments says, I still don't know if it's Travis Reier Sr. analyst for BOL or Travis Reier Senior analyst BOL. At this point, once you hit 55, Lance, it's senior. I got a senior discount at a restaurant the other day. I was simultaneously just crestfallen, but then also, as you get older, you become more of the apps and points kind of guy, I think, or gal. You like those discounts. You like those things. So, hey, whatever works, Lance.
I think it's senior, right? Let's
yeah,
go
super senior. Yeah, senior XL. How about that? We'll take that. We'll take that as well. Well, guys, as always, do a great job for us. Of course, right there at BamaOnLine.com, primarily the roundtable. Be sure to come hang out with these fellas, myself, Tim Watts, the rest of our staff right there at BamaOnLine.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here as well. If you haven't already, we would certainly appreciate that. Hit a like button for us here on the channel. And also, there it is, the thumbs up. I like that, JoJo. Also, hit that notifications bell. You get all of our content here on YouTube as it drops. Guys, look forward to doing it again real soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for following the show, listening today. And hey, if you have any questions, come hang out with us at BamaOnLine.com. You go to the message board, go to the roundtable. We are there every single day. So if you got further questions, if you want further information, come hang out with us and check us out at BamaOnLine.com. It's going to be a busy weekend. A lot of kids on campus. We'll be providing the updates there, and we'll see you guys on the YouTube channel next week.
Got to get Tim Watts, our leader, get well soon, Tim. We got to get back to the quad box. Try box. It's effective, but we got to get back to that. It's not the same without the old quad box. So for Joseph Hastings, Andrew Bone, Travis Reier, thank you again for joining us. And until next time, so long, everybody.